Hello everybody, my name is Ali Sabbour. I'm a professor of vascular surgery in Ain Shams Medical School and the former director of the Medical Education Unit and the present director of the Extended Modular Program. Welcome to the presentation of how to write multiple choice questions. This recorded presentation targets health professionals involved in constructing multiple choice question, whatever the grade. By the end of this presentation, you will be able to write MCQs in the proper format, avoiding common flows or common mistakes that enable students to guess the correct answer. You will be able to construct questions targeting comprehension, application, and analysis of knowledge. Note that I didn't mention simple knowledge recall because it is too simple to be a target for your questions. On the other hand, it is difficult and even questionable that MCQs can test knowledge synthesis. By definition, MCQs cannot test evaluation. Now for some terminology. Consider this sample question. This is what we call the stem of the question. And this is the answer or the key response. These are the distractors. And the stem distractors and the answer, all of them together are called the item. In this presentation, we will talk about these three components. That is, how to write a stem in the proper format, how to write the answer, and how to write the distractors. When writing an MCQ, we follow this sequence. First, we define or select the knowledge that we want to ask about. Then, we choose the level of knowledge that we are going to test, whether we are going to test understanding, application, or analysis. This will be discussed at the end of this presentation. We always start by writing the stem, and we should be sure that it's clear and precise. Then we write the correct answer or the key response, and also be sure it is accurate. And finally, we end with writing the distractors. The alternatives, which is the answer and the distractors, should be 4 or 5 to decrease the chance of guessing the right answer. Now, we will take them one by one, and for each component, we will start by a common mistake that you should avoid, then we'll show you how to correct it. The stem. The stem can either be a question or an incomplete statement to be answered or completed by one of several given options. What do you think about this stem? Opportunistic infection. Well, it's not good because it is neither a question nor an incomplete statement. You have few seconds to think about how to correct it and propose a better stem. Well, a question can be, which of the following statements describes opportunistic infection? An incomplete statement could be, by definition, opportunistic infection is. Ideally, the item should be answerable without having to read all the options. You can now realize that this is a bad stem. Putting it in the form of a question, now you can propose an answer. This is what we call cover the options rule. Again, If you cover the options, you cannot propose any answer with this poorly formulated stem, pyogenic infections. But if you correct it, which of the following organisms can cause pyogenic infections, then you can propose some answers. Don't forget, cover the options rule. You should place all common elements in the stem. This makes the item simpler. In this question, note that bilharzial polypi are repeated in all the choices. Can we improve this? A better stem could be: choose the correct statement describing the pathogenesis of bladder bilharzial polypi. This question looks better. The stem of the question should contain relevant information only and should be as short as possible. The stem should not contain abbreviations. The first sentence in this stem is not important. It can be easily omitted, and you can still answer the question. Note that the stem is generally longer in items testing application or analysis of knowledge. That's what we call case vignettes. Now, this is a very important slide. You should structure the question to ask about the correct answer and not the wrong answer. Ideally, the wording of the stem should not contain not or except. I'm sure that all of you can recall a lot of MCQs containing the words not and except. And this is simply because when you start to write down the choices, it is much easier to formulate one wrong statement and 4 correct statements than to formulate one correct statement and 4 wrong statements that looks to be correct. Look to this question, for example. The biceps muscle can perform any of the following actions except, and the choices are flexion of the elbow, flexion of the shoulder, supination of the forearm, extension of the elbow. The student will select D as the right answer because he simply knows that the biceps is not an extensor muscle. This does not mean that he knows that the biceps is a supinator of the forearm. If the teacher assumes that the student will select the correct answer by excluding all the other options, that is not correct. The student can simply ignore C because he is sure that the biceps is not an extensor. Actually, you are simply asking if the biceps is a flexor or an extensor. Here is another example. All the following statements are true as regard hepatitis B vaccine, except it is prepared from a living attenuated pathogen, it is given in a course of 3 injections, the 3rd injection is given 6 months after the 1st injection, successful immunization will raise the titer of hepatitis B surface antigen antibodies. Now, A is the correct answer because the vaccine is a killed pathogen. The student does not have to know all about the course of injections, the spacing between them, and the immunological response of the body to get the correct answer. Although the teacher assumes that the students will go through all this to choose the right answer. The teacher should ask himself, what am I asking about? We usually formulate questions like this when we try to ask about all aspects related to hepatitis B vaccination. This question, as you will know later, is what we call an unfocused question. Now, if you want to formulate a question about which group of vaccines does hepatitis B vaccine belong to, this could be like this. Hepatitis B vaccine is prepared from killed pathogen, living attenuated pathogen, purified microbial immunogens, detoxified bacterial toxins. Now this is a focused item. Sometimes you may use not or except if the negative information is important. This is an example. Examination of a patient following a motor car accident. In the primary survey for disability, it can include any of the following clinical examination except. We want to stress that you should not check his neck for fractured spine because this may cause paraplegia.